All right, welcome to episode 2 of What's the Tease. I'll be your host, Pillow Talk, and today's guest is the super sensational Peekaboo Pointe. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I thought doing a podcast would also be a different kind of tease for, especially in the burlesque world, because it's such a visual art form. And so I thought by creating the podcast, it's sort of the ASMR experience of the tease.
So true. Yeah. I get that auditory tease.
Okay, so we're going to just literally jump in and also just give the people a chance to get to know you, for those of you who don't know Peekaboo Pointe. And then at the same time, for those of you who do know her, maybe you'll get an insight into something new. So you've created a body of work over, say, 15 years?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah. And your background is in contemporary dance and choreography, with stripping and cabaret performance. I want to know, with this background, how did you find your way into the world of burlesque?
Well, I found my way into burlesque from being a dancer, a more classical dancer. And when I moved to New York, when I finished my undergrad studies in dance, and I moved to the big city, tried to be a dancer, and I did become a dancer, and I found myself very unsatisfied with dancing for other people. So I found burlesque by accident, really. I'd always been obsessed with vintage burlesque and been a fan of Tura Satana and some of the legends, since I was a teenager, but didn't think I could actually do it, or that it existed. So I ended up, by accident, performing in a show in New York and making a really silly solo performance that ended up becoming this thing that I loved to do. And I felt really at home on stage in a burlesque world. And, at the time it was gritty dive bars that were letting us kind of do whatever we wanted in the back room for $5. And it's really evolved into something totally different, into an art form unto itself that is really exciting. So it was totally by accident, and I feel like I was able to find my own vision and my voice within the constructs of a 4-minute performance that ends with your top off.
When you came to New York, what was the draw for you for going to New York? Because of course there's so many big cities doing a lot of different things. What was the draw for New York for you?
Yeah, for me it was, it is the place that you move if you want to try to make a living at something artistic, or and I don't have the LA aesthetic. It's just, not that there's anything wrong with LA, but it's just not for me. I'm not.
Is it because you like to
dance? I'm not more of a commercial dancer. I'm a weirdo performance art loving gritty. It's much more gritty, and New York is more like the spot for that.
Okay.
And so I moved to New York I actually moved here with my heart set on dancing for Merce Cunningham.
Mm-hmm.
And I was given an opportunity to apprentice for the company, and financial reasons, being 22 years old and just left home and didn't have a real job yet, I had to turn down the opportunity to do that.
Oh, damn.
And it was a really big loss for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this opportunity to work with the choreographer that I've always admired, and it was just well, now what do I do? So I'm here in the city, and I just felt like everything was difficult. And one thing that was great about burlesque is it felt easy and I could put it on my terms. So I didn't have to depend on anyone else, which was great. So
Yeah.
I ended up finding my place with having the one thing that I thought was going to be exactly what I wanted ended up leading me to somewhere else,
Yeah.
which ended up leading me to a place that ultimately is exactly where I needed to be,
Yeah. So in your performances, you often explore themes of radical intimacy, women's sexuality, feminism, sex work, queer politics, and identity. I love that you integrate these, I'd say, academic themes into a nightlife space. Do you have a strategic process on how you develop these pieces for such a setting?
I get such enjoyment out of this idea of kind of tricking an audience at midnight when they're drunk and thinking they're just having a great time into like laughing and then actually feeling something afterwards.
Yeah.
Being like, whoa, what just happened? But that was so fun. But oh, why do I feel something? Like, it's like something I get such a kick out of making people feel things when they least expect it,
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something that I've worked really hard to craft that into my performances because I think burlesque is important. The art form and the genre is important for us as like humans and women, and especially in, as feminists, and redefining what we see as beautiful and important, and giving us as women a voice when we don't often have one. And what's better than making someone think at 2 in the morning at a slippery.
The themes that you're dealing with in your performances, as women, whenever we want to claim our space, people say, oh no, you can only do this, it has to be presented in a certain way.
Right.
So you make a piece that's like, oh, this is your artistic voice about expressing these themes. It's like, great, so it needs to happen in this venue, so a formalized theater space, or where people sit down and it's only...
Or no one's going to take you seriously.
Yes, exactly. It's this demographic that will be able to understand the work that you're communicating. So like, I truly appreciate that your work exists across all those platforms.
Yeah, it's something that's become really important to me because I feel like there is something I really love, like the art world with a capital A, and it's all of its pretension. I love it, but I also like I find it annoying and that it's so alienating to the mass audience. Like there's something about being able to connect with all people, not necessarily people who think they understand art. And that's what nightlife is. If you can like present art in the same exact way to both audiences, like the high art and the like just entertainment world, then you're actually getting more of your point across. It's more people are going to see and understand what you're trying to say.
Yeah, because it has that accessibility in a way.
Yeah, it is. And I think art should be accessible.
Yes.
It's for everybody,
Art is for everybody. Of course, South African culture being somewhat slightly more conservative. And then, of course, like having to find venues and spaces to be able to host these shows in, where you're speaking of this reclamation of the female voice and body, and it's such a hard sell to people. And I just feel...
It really is.
And I'm like, it feels so hard to sell it, but for me, it's so easy to understand. And it's like, and if I could just show you...
That's the thing. It is when you try to explain it to somebody who hasn't seen it. It's like, but wait, if you just come to the show, you'll understand. Like, it's not as scary as you think. Yeah. It's actually really fun, and you'll feel so differently about our voices when you're done.
Yes.
You might have some more understanding or some compassion for what we're trying to do.
So speaking of the high arts, you recently or not so recently achieved your MFA in performance and interactive media art. From that, you have been creating work outside of the burlesque and entertainment world. And with this in mind, I'm interested to know, would you consider your multimedia dance theatre creations separate from your work produced for nightlife entertainment, or is there an overlap of burlesque influence in these pieces?
I definitely think there's an overlap. Some of the pieces I think could exist in a burlesque show. However, I can't take burlesque out of me. It's like part of my craft and my artistic process. Mm-hmm. So even when I'm creating, like Tansy, my creative partner, with a lot of this work, she and I have created like an hour-length dance theater piece that definitely has burlesque elements in it. However, it's not burlesque, but it's also not. It's theater, it's dance, it's burlesque, it's comedy, it's visual movement. There's so much, but I can't really figure out a name for what it is. But it takes pretty much all of our respective backgrounds and like mushes it up into this thing that you just kind of have to see to understand.
So are you talking about a new piece, or are you talking about Feast?
I'm talking about Feast.
Yeah. On your website, you've got about a half an hour piece of Feast. You're saying your new piece is about an hour. So is that sort of an extension of what you guys have been working on?
It is. We did the first draft of the extension in January. We presented it at Here Art Center in New York, and so it's just under an hour, and it's the first time. I wouldn't say it's done yet. It was definitely still a work in progress, but our goal was to make it an evening length piece, and I was really proud of what we did. So it's kind of, we did a first half to the piece that's online. This is what we made the second section, and then there's a first section that exists in the same world but isn't the same world. It's two very separate pieces, but that in our minds definitely go together in some sort of abstract story arc.
Speaking of that abstract story arc, I really enjoyed watching it. I was a little bit surprised that you had put it up, just knowing that this is currently something you're working with and developing, and it's ongoing. And so does this like encouraging people to come? Because I totally still want to see it in real life, you know?
Yeah, well, I always wonder about that, because I always question when I put things up. I'm like, should I wait or should I just let people see it? And then I don't know, if it's me, I'd want to see it live anyway. Like I'd watch it online, but I never know I can argue both sides of putting it up or keeping it a secret. Yes. So I just put it up.
Yes. I agree with you in terms of being able to argue both sides of that, and also like I don't think that there is a right answer for that question, you know. For me, I know that when I heard about it, I was very interested in seeing it, and then all of a sudden it was there, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so amazing. And then I watched it and I was like, this is so freaking awesome, and now I want to see it live.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping would happen. And all those theaters all across the world would be like, we want this at our theater. That was my ultimate goal.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's like, we have to fly them in and make them do it.
I tell you, like, that is some juicy bait that you got up there.
Oh, good. I'm fishing.
You're fishing. You're out fishing.
I'm fishing.
So, like, when you're describing or thinking about describing burlesque, be it to somebody who's unfamiliar with the art or to somebody who is kind of in the know about burlesque, would you say it's fair to say that the striptease is a fundamental element of a burlesque performance, be it in deconstructing a costume or a character?
Absolutely. Indigo Blue said this once, I think. Like, a burlesque act is a performer enters the stage, magic happens, and she exits the stage, leaving the stage with less on than she had when she started, or the opposite. There is like some sort of reveal, but it's all this. There's no rules. There's no nothing, but except something has to be revealed.
Yes.
Generally, it's clothing, but I think it's also could be like that reveal of who you are, and I think that burlesque is about the performer. I always think the best performers are the ones that come out on stage and you know exactly who they are when they left the stage. You know, it's more about like showing me who you are as a person, and I want to know at least a little bit more about you when you leave the stage.
Yeah. You mentioned about something needs to be revealed. Like, I think that is such a good umbrella for if one ever had to describe it in very few words, that something has to be revealed. And just with some of the pieces that you've constructed, how the audience is left with a feeling sometimes that you didn't expect to feel at 2 a.m.
Yeah,
on a Saturday morning or Sunday morning,
yeah.
You know?
After doing shots with your friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, was there something extra in that last bullet I had?
Yeah, I know.
I think also that reveal could be, as much as there's all the agency is for the artist performing, there is also that reveal of, for the audience member who is watching, it could reveal something about yourself once a performer is done.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it makes me think of my Superman number where I bring a man onto stage. And I feel like in that, I'm not revealing me, but I'm revealing a softness of the personality of the person that I've brought up. Like for me, it's all about the audience, like whoever that man is, you get to see something about him. And maybe reveal something about masculinity and softness and intimacy within that.
Yeah.
Like it's less about me taking my clothes off, it's more about the reveal of this other person.
Yeah. So on the subject of the strip part of the tease, what is your view on the relationship between burlesque and sex work?
I think they like definitely have a relationship. I mean, I feel like historically burlesque dancers were, you know, they were strippers. They are strippers. We are stripping on stage, and I can only really speak for myself. I do definitely relate. They're very separate, although I feel like they're exactly the same and completely different all at the same time. There's still like a connection with your audience. There's still like the movements are still the same. You're still revealing yourself, but you're still connecting with there's still these things that are the same, but then there's something so different about working in a strip club than working in a theater and taking your clothes off.
When speaking to people with a more conservative nature and trying to get your event into their space, that is, of course, always an element that comes up.
Always.
And I'm often just disappointed by just how people simplify these ideas. Stripping or strip tease, this is an element of what's happening. I just find it so strange how people think that it's that basic.
Yeah, and it's also like they're so quick to make judgments about what it really means to be a stripper. There's so much stigma around it that I feel like I've started putting into my work to like start exposing and talking about my work as a stripper. And I think that it is a very conscious political choice to talk about it. I feel like it gets the most heat. Like people are very resistant to hear a stripper who might be smart and want to talk about all the things that you don't really want to hear. Most people don't want to hear about sex work, you know. But I think it's really important conversation to have so that maybe when you go into a venue and you say there's strip tease, people won't be quick to judge and will understand that it's a really muddy complicated world, you know?
Yeah. So in these quarantines,
I like how you said that, quarantines.
I tell you, hey, who would have thought one word would have so many puns and would be able to be manipulated in so many ways to evoke various things.
Oh my gosh, I know. It's great.
In these quarantines, as an artist, how are you coping with being able to produce work, not being able to produce work? Was there like a pause moment before you started getting into things because things are so unknown? You know, what is your general feeling on these quarantines?
Yeah, they have not been easy for me. I have to say I definitely struggle with, and I feel like I've heard a lot of other artists with the same struggle, which makes me feel a little bit more comforted knowing that I'm not the only one struggling to feel creative or inspired. You know, if you had given me 2 months off to create work a year ago with no baggage of death and suffering and grief, I would have been like, yeah, give it to me. I'm like, yes, I'm going to create. I'm going to be in my studio every day. I'm going to make all this stuff. I've got a list of things that I want to make. But I think there's something, it's not just a gift of time. It's also, you know, a global grieving period. And I am really feeling that. And it's been hard for me to, I think the first month it was really difficult to think about my work at all, like even think about it. It felt like I just lost everything, and I have never been away from the stage this long, ever. And it just felt sad. I just felt sad and unsure about what I would do without a stage. And I'm still really unsure of what I'm going to do without a stage. I'm starting to, after like 2 months of this, I'm just now starting to feel like some bursts of creative energy are coming back. And for the last 2 months, I've been just doing little things like cooking and trying to just stay active. And I've been drawing a lot and rediscovering painting in my life, which is something that I never had time to do but used to love doing. And I'm finding that when people give me a deadline, it's really helping.
Yes. Yeah, you have to show up for that.
Yeah, exactly. And somebody is depending on me.
Yes.
So I'm still not feeling okay enough to do things on my own, unfortunately. And I'm really trying hard not to beat myself up about that, about not being productive. But when someone gives me a deadline, I will show up for them. So I just, for the first time, created something that I really am excited about. This weekend was the first time. And it was because I had to show up.
Yeah.
Because a friend asked me to show up. So, and I made a video that I really was proud of. You'll see it soon.
Is that for a specific something that's coming up? Like, is it something you can talk about at the moment, or is it still a work in progress? I think it's going to be probably a series of videos similar. I created it for Legs Malone. One of my dear friends wrote a book about burlesque and her journey, and it's called Strip Down. Yes.
And her launch party is today, and she asked me to create something for her party. So yeah, it's a stop motion. I started playing with stop motion a couple years ago when I was in graduate school, and didn't really have time because it's incredibly labor intensive. Yes. As anyone who has attempted stop motion can relate, it's not something you do unless you have tons of time on your hand.
Ta-da! Tons of time.
Tons of time. So I started doing this work when I was in grad school and really loved it, but like never at once have I felt like, oh, I'm going to go do 12 hours of stop motion for 2 minutes of video. Woo!
I tell you what,
until now.
If this bug bites the stop motion of yours and you like are really feeling its groove, you better make all the stop motion videos you want now.
I know, that's what I keep thinking. Now's the time.
You best hustle on those creative juices.
I know.
Get it out of your system. Because,
seriously.
You know, when the show's open again, you are not going to have any time to do that. You're literally going to have to like take a weekend off.
I know, it's really true. I have to be completely honest. I might be one of those crazy people that like I might really love stop motion. So I think I got to use my time wisely.
Yeah. It's like the best thing you could decide to do creatively that eats up a heck of a lot of time.
Yeah.
Like everybody's trying to figure out how long does it take to make this roast? 8 hours, perfect. You're in.
I know.
Guess what's for dinner, honey? I was doing that
exactly. Like, oh my God, the first month I was like, let's find all the recipes that take all day long. Totally.
So well done to you.
Yeah, thanks.
And it is super fun, and I'm really looking forward to actually seeing that, because the tease of it that you have put up so far already looks so freaking cool.
Awesome.
Okay, so that was episode 2 of What's the Tease, and you have heard from our sensational guest today, Peekaboo Pointe. Peekaboo, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast.
Oh my gosh, thanks so much for having me. I've really enjoyed chatting.
And we're totally looking forward to everything that you'll be creating and serving up for us in the very near future.
Thanks.